everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Market Like a Mother, where this season we are looking at founder stories, specifically Karen's story at Radiant and my story of, being a social media founder as well. And one of the biggest myths about entrepreneurship is that founders have unlimited freedom. I know I definitely hear this from my friends and family all the time, that you could set your own schedule, work from anywhere, which I guess I do, and be your own boss. And while there is truth to that, there's a lot of downsides and other, ways to look at it that people don't talk about. So for this episode, Karen and I are actually going to be discussing some of the questions that we get most from friends, family, and colleagues who are considering entrepreneurship when they find out that we are the owners of our own companies. So let's get into what it actually means to have this flexibility, which is amazing, and how to create boundaries without guilt, and the systems that help us protect our personal time while we're still growing our businesses. Hi, Karen.
Hello. Welcome back. Look at us go.
I know. Another episode in the books. So, okay, I feel like we both get this all the time, but like how often are you met with like, "Oh, how cool is it to be your own boss?"
So weirdly enough, I feel like this has become way more of a thing in the last couple of years than it ever has
Mhm.
before. And while I do not like being the center of attention, it does feel kind of nice to be acknowledged for doing my own thing. So I feel like I'm meeting more and more women that are like, yeah, like go you, which I love. But what about you?
Yeah, I feel like everywhere online that's the goal. People are always like, be your own boss, be your own boss. Like there's so many ways in the age of digital media and social media to do it. So I feel like it's more common than ever versus, 10 years ago, like entrepreneurship felt like a really different thing. At least in my opinion, it felt like you had to like invent a product or found a company from scratch. So it is cool, to how many people have access to do that now. And it is fun.
For
I do like
sure.
it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm even reflecting now on how I feel like when I started my first agency, like it was like you had to have an office. Like that was part of owning a
Yes.
business, which sounds so silly now because we've been through obviously so much change and a lot of us forced through change with COVID. But even,
Mhm.
before COVID, we went remote, which I think alleviates a lot of the cost and expense and barrier that it takes to create your own business too. But yeah, you don't have to have an office to have a business. Crazy.
Yes, I know, which is wild. And I feel like that obviously frees up a lot of our schedules. And I know that's a question that we both hear a lot is like, oh, that must be so freeing. You're in charge of your own schedule. Like, I've always wanted to be able to do that. How do you feel though when people say that? Like, a lot of times I feel like there's like a false connotation that there's more freedom than there is?
Yes. Oh man, such a like loaded question and thought because there's so many pieces to that that are true and also not true, right? So, I mean, it definitely, I think there's the challenge is as an entrepreneur, you are likely incredibly ambitious and motivated and like have a desire to succeed, which means there's a high likelihood too that you are going to put in a lot of hours to make that happen. And so while your schedule does become more like within your control may not mean you get to have less time working.
Yes.
It might mean more time working, but the autonomy and the power to choose and the decision is obviously there's something to be said about that. But how do you feel about this idea of creating your own schedule?
So funny enough, I feel like I always bring up quotes from my grandpa on this podcast.
I
But my
love it.
grandpa, he always used to say like, what a blessing it is to be tired from like pursuing a path that you chose. So I do like to
Mm,
remind myself of that because I agree with you. Like I think when it's your own business and it's something you're so passionate and that you chose, it can be so easy to go like workaholic mode and just put in way more than like a typical 40-hour work week. And it could be exhausting. But I do think like there's so much to be said about how amazing it is that you get to do that, that I get to be tired from pursuing this path that, I am my own boss, I'm in charge of it. So I think there's like, it kind of weighs the time difference that it takes, to maybe put in the extra work at the beginning. But yeah, I mean, I would say I definitely clock more than the 40-hour week most weeks in terms of like my own business for sure.
For sure, because even if you're not working actual hours, like you're still always thinking about your business and opportunities and
Yes.
in conversation with people, whether you're like it's in a work environment or outside of a work environment. But I do have to say, your grandpa is such a wise man. And to add
Yes.
to the quotes, like that reminded me of the Marie Forleo quote of operate from a place of passion and joy, not from a place of stress. And like, I know we talk about mindset a lot, and I think we're talking about it more on this episode too, but there is so much to be said about how you approach a situation from a mindset standpoint, because you can be operating in the same exact day, but operating from a place of stress versus joy, and it just completely shift the way that you're like perceiving what you're doing. And I think to your point, when you're running your own business, it's easier for you to realize that this was a decision that you made and that you are not like a victim of your circumstances. Like you have to keep coming back to the fact that like, well, if I really don't like this, then I actually can change all of it. Like I have
Right.
a lot of autonomy over the day to day, my future, because it's my business. So that in itself feels really freeing. And it like, if you can like shift back to that mindset too, I think that is really helpful from a business owner standpoint is like, yeah, like, do I care enough or am I upset enough about this or do I hate this enough to where I don't want to do it? Because likely I can change that. And if I don't, like, and I'm like kind of just complaining to complain, then like I can shift my mindset and operate from a place of joy because I'm choosing to do this and I get to do this. And this is my life that I've always wanted. So I love that. I love that your grandpa said that.
Yes, I feel like just mindset is like such a big thing we keep coming back to, like in this founder series too. Like it's just like such a key piece of it. And like something that you mentioned too is like even if you're not working, it's so much more common as a founder where you're always thinking about your business. Like I know it's hard for me to like shut off that side of my brain. Is there certain things that you do to like protect like this is my personal time as opposed to, when you're working and thinking about Radiant?
Yeah, I go to sleep. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Nice.
When I'm sleeping, and even when I'm sleeping, I have dreams about work.
Yes.
Um, I think it's like a perpetual like journey, right? Like you never
Yeah.
have it all figured out. I think I've gotten better about protecting my time. And like even
Mhm.
this week as an example, it's the kids' spring break last week and this week. And so ahead of time, I blocked out like out of office time so that I could really like unplug for a couple of hours to be with my kids while they're home with us. And instead of it being like that time was still kind of open for work and I'm sort of signed on, because I think that's the biggest thing that I've realized over time too is while yes, like it's about work life integration and like being able to like go with the flow a bit and flex and be
Right.
not super rigid. There is like times when I feel like I have to separate it. Like I have to
Yeah.
be like with my family and kids right now, or I have to be signed on and working like heads down on things. Because I think, and this is something that like I learned when we did our first kind of bigger travel trailer trips. We bought a trailer, we went on these long like multi-week trips across different states. Was like the days and the times that I did that where I was like trying to kind of work a little bit while also being on these trips was super challenging.
Yeah.
So I think like planning ahead for sure, like I'm such a planner and I do think that definitely helps to protect your time, is like I know this is going to be a time that I'm completely signed off versus this is my morning block where I'm going to be like heads down working and need to have minimal interruptions. So I think that that was definitely a learning lesson for me, is not trying to like be working the whole time I'm also supposed to be enjoying my life.
Yes, I was gonna say that's like a big thing I've learned is like instead of like half working while trying to be present, like it's like okay,
Mm-hmm.
have your heads down time, and like then you could be able to allot some personal time. Because there's been times where I'm like, oh, I'll combine these two things. I'll like work half the afternoon, then do half this, and it just for me that like doesn't work. Like I really need to have those clear boundaries of like this is heads down time and this is my personal time. So like kind of getting into that mindset of like it's one or the other. Like you can't be working while simultaneously trying to, enjoy the company of others or, be, in my case, I know I can't work as well from like certain locations if I'm out and distracted. So that's been like a big thing for me is like separating heads down versus fun personal
I
time.
I totally agree. And that doesn't mean like you have to take a whole day off even, but it
Yeah.
does mean you have to be like in the moment. So I think that's where kind of like that integration piece comes. So one of the things that I've started to do, because this is Summer's last year before she's full time in school, is like have those times on my calendar to eat lunch with my husband in Summer. And
Hmm.
so like I'll sign off for that hour during the middle of the day to eat lunch and be with them, and then I come back online. So it's not like I'm blocking an entire like half a day or a whole
Yeah.
day. It's like I just need to, I put my phone away, I like close my laptop, I go into a different space, and I'm like fully present with my kids. um
I love that.
I think that's huge. Yeah. My word of the year, Lauren, I don't know if you picked one, but you'll have to share if you did, is presence, because I think
Oh.
that's where the enjoyment of life comes from, is being present and in the moment. It's something my husband's fantastic at. I'm always
Hmm.
struggling with. So that's my focus this year, and I think it speaks to what we're talking about here too.
I love that. See, I haven't picked one yet, and I might have to steal that because
Do
that
it.
has been something that I'm working on too. You did touch on this a little bit, but you've mentioned this. Honestly, we've talked about this in a few episodes, but doing, you call it work life integration as opposed to work life balance, which I think is like very accurate to even like what we do here at Radiant. Do you want to speak a little bit to more like what that looks like to you, this work life integration that you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's really what we're talking about right now, is that it's not about like, oh, I'm gonna have, 4 hours online, 4 hours
Hmm.
off necessarily like every single week, but it's like, how can I infuse the things that I love about work and the things that I love about my life outside of work
Yeah.
into my whole life? I feel like there's this like silly idea that we all have fallen victim to, of like, you've got your work you, you've got your life you, and whether you're a business owner or not, like we're one person and it all intertwines with, each with like all of these different components of our life. And so the more I feel like we can accept that, the more it's easier to like flow and move between those different components and aspects of our life, and enjoy them more, like we were saying, be more present in each of those too. So whether that's signing off for an hour to eat lunch, or if it's taking those bigger blocks of time to be, traveling or present with your family, or, moving from one place to another. But what do you feel like how do you feel about that word, that like, or that phrase rather, work life balance? Because when you hear that, it makes, how does it make you feel?
I mean, it's difficult because it's like I have my work at Radiant and then I have my work as a founder for my own personal brand. And work life integration for my personal brand is hard because when you have a personal brand, your life is the brand. So that's been harder for me to separate. I block off specific days where I'm not filming content. I'm doing things just for me, not for the sake of creating social media content. But I will say at Radiant, it's nice because I mean, even being part time, I'm able to, make my schedule kind of like you said, where I could have like an hour here set aside. I could kind of adjust my schedule to have that integration more than just like I'm offline Monday, I'm online Tuesday. Because I think, again, like you said, it's harder. It's harder to live your life in that aspect. Like you need to be able to find ways to work it in. And I feel like balance is a big thing too. I 100% know I've experienced this before, but have there been times that you just have had that balance wrong of that work life integration? Either you're doing too much or honestly even doing too little.
Yeah, I feel like it's so funny, because I feel like, and talking to other business owners too, a lot of times we struggle with those slow times even more than we
Mm,
struggle with the busy times, because it's like a little bit of that feeling of, you know, how much slower can it get before things stop, or like I need to be filling my time and constantly doing. And so I think that's something that I've been working on, is allowing for those pauses and those like rest periods, because I think so much is cyclical, and you'll go back through these like different seasons of your business and your life, and like things will like all come at once and be really busy, and then it'll taper off again. And so I definitely think recognizing that all stages are temporary, and
yeah.
really being able to enjoy them and make the most of them while you're in them. I think that's a big important part. And then, I mean, just reflecting back on what we talked about earlier with the traveling and such, is like I realized in those times when I'm traveling, like I do need to be more strict with my boundaries and my time blocks, so that I can really be present. Otherwise, it just like leaks into all of this other space. Because it's so hard to, when you run a business, like it's nearly impossible to avoid like something popping up. And if you allow space for those things to pop in, then it's just going to take up all the space that it can. And so I feel
Right.
like having those harder kind of boundaries and time blocks in place is super helpful for those particular moments.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like something that can be tempting as a founder is like the thought that working more, equals more revenue, equals more success, which isn't always the case too. That was definitely something I had to learn, where there's been times that, in my like personal brand, I've committed to way too much, and then it comes to the point that I'm overworked and I'm making mistakes. So whether I'm not reading the brief correctly, I'm not providing to the client what they asked for exactly. And so that was something I had to learn too, is just because you're working more and your work life integration is leaning more towards work, it doesn't mean that's quality work. Because if you're tired and you're exhausted and you're overworked, you're not going to be producing your top quality work. So that's why that integration too, I feel like, is just so important as a founder, to make sure that your output remains quality.
I totally agree with that. I could not agree more. And I think that's kind of goes to the 80-20 rule, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
80% of the outcomes come from 20% of your work, where I feel like it's so easy to fill your schedule with more and more and more and more things to do. But how much of that is actually working you closer towards your goal? So
Right.
just really staying honest with yourself and trying to evaluate on a larger scale, and then like kind of narrow down like on a monthly basis, weekly basis, even like day to day basis of like how much of what feels pressing and urgent and important actually is pressing, urgent, and important, and that I need to like dedicate time to today. What can I delegate? What can I push back so that I am like the time that I am spending is really high quality time, like you said.
And if there's someone listening who's like, let's say they're an aspiring founder or they're early in their founder journey, is there anything that you would avoid to kind of, or anything you would recommend they avoid to avoid that burnout? Like, is there one piece of advice that you'd say, like, this is the way early on that I prevented founder burnout that you could remember?
Man, I do really feel like this kind of goes back to the Marie Forleo quote too, of like operating from a place of joy versus operating from a place of stress. I feel like if
Yeah.
you are finding yourself constantly operating from a place of stress, that there's probably some things you want to change, and
Yeah.
don't just push through. Stop, pause, reflect, like take that time to really look at the trajectory, because it's like, okay, if I'm like this now, is it going to get better or worse? Like, because
Yeah.
there's definitely times that we get really busy, right? And you're like, okay, I
Hmm.
can see like that this is like a very busy season. Maybe I onboarded some new clients, maybe I just hired a few new employees, and like there's going to be like there's the light at the end of the tunnel where things will settle back
Yeah.
down. But if it's like, okay, this has been going on for a long time, like there's no like end to the reason of busyness, then that might be really when you want to like take a good hard look at what you've got going on and where there might be some shifts to be made. Because our tendency,
Yeah.
like as entrepreneurs, I feel, is to like push through, right? And even like just as Americans and with societal pressures, like it's like, okay,
Yeah.
push harder, work harder, like you said. And that's not usually the solution. And we
Right.
are just human beings, right? So
Yes.
got to factor
I
that in.
totally agree. And I feel like too, there's something to note too, if you're a founder and you're in the early stages, at least in my perspective of it, was if there's these friction points and these issues of getting burnt out, getting overworked early, like, you got to nip it in the bud as quick as possible, because
Hmm.
as your business grows, these issues are just going to be multiplied because there's more stress, there's more clients, there's more money on the line. So I think too, like, especially if you're in your early founder season, like, these are things that you want to address right away if these feelings are coming up, if these things are happening, because the sooner you could get these systems in place and learn how to protect your personal time, learn how to do that work life integration, I think the better.
For sure. I completely agree with that. And that just goes back to the systems piece too, is like making sure that as you're like seeing the things that are overwhelming you, you're identifying what as you grow your team, maybe excuse me, you'd be hiring for, or what do you need to create a process around that could be easy to pass off to somebody else? Because I think all of that is like that's the time to do it. I know it sounds crazy when you're like busy and stressed out already, but that's just going to be like that's you like a vote for your future self, right? Like they say, creating those habits, making those small changes now is what's going to let you live that life you want to live down the road.
I love that. I Yeah, always think of the light at the end of the tunnel. I feel like that's like something we keep coming back to also. But as for kind of wrapping up here, I wanted to ask you to maybe take us through our framework and kind of think of it in the sense of an aspiring entrepreneur who's listening, who might be scared to start, because of some of these reasons we talked about, and kind of what they could expect and kind of what your overall thoughts on this are.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that while entrepreneurship offers a lot of flexibility, like we talked about, like there's definitely an aspect of like you need to be disciplined and have structure, both for the fact that like to grow your business, you need to be doing that, but also then to protect your personal time and well-being, you need to be disciplined in that way as well. So I think those are two seemingly contradictory things, but definitely ask like both aspects of entrepreneurship, because really managing our time is the most critical piece. And as you start out and say you're a solopreneur, like your time is so valuable. Likely you have a lower budget too, so you don't have as much money to play with or to outsource with. And so your time is your biggest, most important resource. And we only have so much of it. So how are you going to be using it? Um, and then I think, like we talked about, definitely the integration piece is not trying to find like this super set, structured, immobile schedule that's like, this is me working, this is me living, but realizing that all of it is you living, and how can you make it all as enjoyable as possible? And I think that comes back to being present and to really tuning into your own needs, and making sure that you're prioritizing that alongside growing your business. Um, but yeah, what about you? What have you taken from this, or what is your advice for whether they're just starting or they're in it now and kind of struggling with some things from a time perspective?
I think I just don't want to scare people, because at the end of the day, like, I love being my own boss. I love entrepreneurship. Like, for me, I think it's an amazing path to take, and it does give you, that flexibility and freedom. I think you just really need to focus on almost willpower. Like, that's a skill that I frankly didn't have too much of when I started my solopreneur journey, and it's something I had to learn. But really having, that motivation and that will to get the hard work done when it needs to be done, to learn how to unplug. I feel like that's like one of the biggest things, is like have the willpower to also know when to step away, and when the quality of your work is going to suffer. So I definitely don't want any of these things we talked about to deter people, but it definitely is a lot of things to think about. But if you keep in mind everything we talked about today, you're going to have a really good foundation, going into it.
Yeah, and I love your note on willpower, because I attended a session at a leadership conference a while back that talked a lot about willpower. And it was basically how willpower is truly a muscle, and you can strengthen that
Yeah.
muscle through practice. And so, like, the last thing you want to do is have like all these hard decisions and things that need to be done at the end of the day when you're depleted of your willpower muscle. And
Mhm.
I think that's like something that if you are considering entrepreneurship, maybe you haven't started your business yet, is like practice that willpower building now, like trial it out, grow that muscle so that you can stay committed to these things. Cause like Lauren said, like you said, it's like there's so much good in owning your own business. And every once in a while, yeah, I'm like, man, I wish I worked at Starbucks and I could just end my shift, go home
Yep.
and not think about work anymore. But here I am, 15 years later, still doing this. So obviously, like, I love it. I don't want to leave it. It is challenging, but I think you are the like main one holding yourself accountable. You have to be disciplined. You need that willpower. So these are things you can kind of practice now and say, you know, look at what you have on your plate within your current employed position, or wherever you're at currently, and like identify something that like feels challenging, or maybe something you don't want to do, and like see if you can get yourself to do it. See if you can take small steps towards that and practice these things that you would definitely need to be using and deploying as an entrepreneur.
I love that. And I love the willpower as a muscle analogy. That is like something I'm going to be thinking about now going forward. I love that. All right. Well, before you go, make sure to check out our website, learn more about Radiant and how we help brands grow with intention. You could follow us on social. We are on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And we're really funny on TikTok, might I add. And if
Oh
you
yeah.
loved today's, yeah, we got some good ones on there. And if you loved today's episode, you could stream it on Apple or Spotify. And we always have the video versions uploaded to YouTube as well. Thank you for hanging out with us. And until next time, stay
Stay
radiant.
radiant.